Hello and welcome back to the channel.
Now for the coup d'etat. 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 For the coup d'etat.
Well, weeks ago, I did a Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark review where I talked about the books, some of the greatest books ever written by anybody ever, born of a woman. Unfortunately, they tried to make a movie out of these books. That is unfortunate because that means I gotta talk about this freaking piece of crap. Before we get into this chore that I have to do, we're a very small channel, so subscribe please. It makes us feel better at night. So I don't know if you could tell, but I don't really like this movie. In all honesty, it's one of the most disappointing movies I've ever seen in my life. I want to start by relaying a warning that my father gave me before we saw this movie. It was actually right when the trailer came out. Papa Sauter said, "Now frickin' listen, David. If you frickin' see this frickin' movie, remember that it's not gonna frickin' be as good as whatever you're frickin' imagining in your frickin' imagination." And I was just like, really, Papa? And his warning would have been a good warning, but I was never in any danger. Because this movie does not do any of the stories justice in this whatsoever. Basically, this is the Scary Stories illustration movie. I want to start off by saying this movie does not get a lot of hate online. At least not what I've seen. So I'm here to make up for everybody else withholding punishment. So let's go ahead and get our turd picking fingers out and pick through this wet fart of a movie. I've already kind of gone through in the last Scary Stories video I did my personal history with Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. The books, they're my favorite books, apart from one. And I just want to talk about the elephant in the room. Why the frick would you not make an anthology movie in the same realm of like the Amicus movies from the 70s and stuff? Like, we've had great horror anthology films, and this could have been a great like gateway horror movie for younger audiences and a great modern day horror anthology film. The Goosebumps movie I liked. The Goosebumps movie kind of worked because the Goosebumps books are a little long to make an anthology film out of, in my opinion, so they kind of had to do what they did. And it was fun for what it was. I really enjoyed it. But the Scary Stories, like, in these books are short enough to where you could make an excellent, just pick all the most popular ones. My favorite is Mitai Dodie Walker. That's my favorite scary story of all time. I don't want to get into how they just butchered that story. Let's go ahead and get the pros out of the way because there's not going to be a lot of them, folks. Spoiler alert. The monsters in the movie they're true to the artwork. They look good. That's it. Okay, now for the cons. Basically everything else, in my opinion, even the acting sucks. The movie is more about honoring the artwork than the actual stories. And like I said before, guys, I love the artwork in these books. It is some of the best artwork ever put in a book, period. However, there is more to these books than just the drawings. Even the written stories, like it shows in the movie, the stories being written in the book, because the whole idea is that, oh, they found this Sarah, whatever her face is, I don't even care about the name, but they found her book, and basically like the stories write themselves, and the book is haunted, and the monsters basically come to life, and the written stories. When you know these stories as well as me, I've memorized some of these stories, guys. Like I could probably tell most of these stories almost word for word straight from memory. But as the stories are being written in the movie and you see it, they literally are not the same as the book. They freaking change the way they're worded, and I'm like, it's borderline disrespectful in my opinion. Also, you would think that they would choose, there's lots of names given in these books, and you'd think that they would choose a name from the book to make the author of the book in the movie just as kind of like an Easter egg. I mean, I get what they're going for. Hate it, but I still get what they're going for. But they could have chosen a name from the books, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but this name is nowhere in the books. It's just some made up name. Or they could have even done like an Easter egg, like with the author's name, you know, made like the first name Alvin or the last name Schwartz or a play on one of those two names, then that would have been kind of a cool Easter egg. I could have been like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. So the reason I thought when I was watching the movie they made the author of the book in the movie a girl is because I thought they were going to save the most terrifying drawing in the book for last. Like, I thought it was going to be like this huge thing where you're just like, oh, everybody knows this drawing. Let me see if I can find it. This drawing right here, I thought they were going to freaking use this as the author of the book. That's why I thought they made the author a girl in the book, was so that we could have that reveal. But no, they just freaking used that drawing in a story that is totally unrelated to that drawing. They use it for the big toe ghost, which was a huge waste of what many people say is the scariest drawing in this book. Another gripe I have is the monsters don't do what they did in the book. I already touched on this, like the big toe ghost is totally the drawing from a different story altogether. Harold turning kids into a scarecrow is not what he does in the actual story. Harold in the book is so much scarier than he is in the movie. The book literally ends with him skinning a man and laying his bloody skin out to dry on the roof of the hut that they were living in. I'm not one of those guys that's just like, if the movie would have been rated R, it would have been so much better, bro. I'm not a big proponent of that. I think PG-13 movies, horror movies, can be just as effective as rated R horror movies. We don't, like I said, we don't need to see everything. What you can imagine is almost always scarier than what they're going to put on the screen. But if making it rated R would have meant that freaking Harold would have done the terrifying things in the movie that he does in the book, then I would have been like, let's do it, because it's worth it. That's one of the scariest stories in all three books. The pale lady from the story The Dream, just like absorbing that kid, it's just weird. Like, where did they get it from? It doesn't happen in the book. I don't understand who was smoking what. Another con is I just don't care about any of the characters. Like I said, the acting is mediocre at best, in my opinion, and I'm not trying to be mean. It just is. I think they were probably doing the best with what they had, but what they had was dog crap. I hated the story. I hated the story of the movie. And it's funny because the story ends with them just being like, we know that, what's his face? Like I said, I don't care about any of the names. We know that our friend is still out there somewhere, which is just a weird thing to say. I don't recall like them acting earlier in the movie like they could get their characters back from wherever they went. I don't know. It's foggy in my memory. I haven't seen this movie in a little bit because it made me that angry. But I'm just like, I don't care if he gets rescued or not. What the? I don't care about any of this. The thing is when you're talking about scary stories to tell in the dark, you're talking about a series of books that defied the cultural norms of what a children's book could be at the time. These books were super challenged when they came out, and they defined an entire generation of horror fans, myself included. And these are, like I said, they're timeless stories. They will never be forgotten. People are always like, people that have never heard of these books. I have heard people that have never heard of these books saying or like telling one of the stories from these books and not even realizing that that's where that story came from. I've seen at least 3 of these stories appear in that show Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction, with Jonathan Rakes, and I always point them out to my wife when we're watching because she loves that show. I just want to close this review with this. Whereas the books have made a distinctive mark on history and will never be forgotten, the biggest crime the movie commits is by being the absolute antithesis of that. Forgettable. And it will pass into the obscurity of horror film history with merely a few that might call it to mind every now and then. Anyway, I am glad to be done with that video. We finally got that out of the way. Like I said before, it should have been an anthology film. Would have been so amazing, and I actually had a pretty cool idea of how they could do that. My idea was they should select the stories and make them all take place in the same time period, and then every time one story ends, the camera moves across the horizons and across like landscapes, and then basically lands in the next story. I thought that would be cool. Just a neat way of doing it. And as you know, we have the desire to make more horror short films for this channel. Just trying to figure out how to get the resources together for that. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see us attempt to make a short film based on one of these stories. I was actually planning one a long time ago and just couldn't make it happen back then. A lot of life stuff getting in the way. But I know exactly how I would shoot several of these stories, and I actually bought some of the material. We were going to do Harold at one point, and I actually bought some of the material to get the Harold costume made and together. But anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe. This video is brought to you by miSKULLaneous. Yeah, it's us. Subscribe. Bye.